It's easy to admire people who chase the extraordinary, who want to rewrite what's possible and go where few dare. But there's a difference between bravery and belief that no rules apply to you. And somewhere along that line stood OceanGate. It's a story of calculated risk, backed by confidence and missing one thing that mattered most: safety. When the Titan vanished, the world gasped.
Her secrets waiting for a time when man could safely navigate the depths of 13,000 feet.
Strange story coming in, and fears are growing by the minute.
A submersible vessel which takes people to see the wreck of the Titanic has gone missing in the Atlantic Ocean.
But here's the uncomfortable truth many still don't know. The tragedy was something that plenty of people saw coming. Engineers warned, industry veterans flagged risks, even OceanGate's own people raised alarms. So why didn't anyone hit the brakes? Because when ambition outpaces accountability, safety becomes a PR problem, and that's where the cover-up begins. Today, we're peeling back the layers of what OceanGate tried not to tell you about Titan's safety. From what was ignored to what was buried and who tried to speak up before the silence became permanent, we'll discuss everything. June 18th, 2023. A weather window opens, and a 22-foot carbon fiber tube called Titan slips beneath the surface of North Atlantic waters. 5 souls were on board, descending into darkness, both literal and, as we'd later learn, moral. There was Stockton Rush, OceanGate's CEO and the man behind the mission. He was part inventor and part risk-taker. Alongside him was Shahzada Dawood, a British-Pakistani billionaire with a passion for exploration, and his 19-year-old son, Suleiman. Suleiman was reportedly hesitant about the dive, but eager to bond with his dad. Then there was Paul Henry Nargeolet, often called Mr. Titanic, a French explorer who'd visited the wreck dozens of times and knew those ghostly halls better than anyone alive. And finally, Hamish Harding, a British adventurer who'd been to the edge of space, crossed Antarctica, and was always chasing the next extreme. All of them trusted OceanGate's vision. They trusted that this vessel had been built with care, trusted that someone had said, yes, this is safe enough. But 1 hour and 45 minutes into the descent, there was complete silence. Communication vanished, and somewhere in the crushing depths, where pressure hit 6,000 pounds per square inch, Titan imploded. Instantly, violently, and beyond the possibility of rescue. At first, the world clung to hope. Maybe they were trapped. Maybe they'd surface. But insiders, engineers, ex-employees, even the US Navy already knew what most of us didn't. This was no rescue mission. It was a recovery operation. But what if we told you this wasn't a mere technical failure? What if the real failure started long before that dive, on paper and in ignored emails? Because as we'll see next, the people who knew the Titan wasn't safe tried to speak up, and OceanGate tried to shut them down. Red flag number 1, the certification was skipped. Here's a question. If you were strapping yourself into a tiny tube designed to plunge 2.5 miles into the ocean, where the pressure could turn a steel ball into a soda can, wouldn't you want someone, anyone, to check that it was actually safe? Like maybe an independent certification agency? Someone whose job isn't launch exciting ventures, but make sure you don't get vaporized? Well, OceanGate ignored that. Instead of submitting Titan to any recognized certification body like DNV or ABS, they decided to skip that part altogether. Their CEO, Stockton Rush, openly bragged about how the certification process was, in his words, an obstacle to innovation. He mentioned that, at some point, safety is just pure waste. Rush believed that going through the formal review process would slow them down, that regulators were too cautious and too stuck in the past. So OceanGate took a bold, or shall we say reckless, approach. Build their own rules, certify themselves, and just keep diving. Industry experts were not amused. Patrick Leahy, president of Triton Submarines, fired back saying, certification is the crucible within which responsible innovation occurs. And yet Titan operated without that stamp of approval. OceanGate bet everything on being the disruptor in an industry where disruption can kill. And they marketed it like a moonshot for billionaires, forgetting that the ocean doesn't care about ambition. Red flag number 2, expert warnings were ignored. In 2018, over 36 industry leaders from the Marine Technology Society penned a letter to OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush. They expressed grave concerns about the Titan submersible's safety. They highlighted that the company's own marketing boldly claimed the sub would meet or exceed DNVGL safety standards, and yet there was no intention to follow those class rules. Rob McCallum, one of the most respected names in the submersible world, didn't mince words. He told CEO Stockton Rush point blank, "You are going to kill someone." Rush, however, dismissed these concerns as baseless cries and took them as a personal insult. Then came David Lockridge, OceanGate's former director of marine operations. He raised alarms about the sub's design, particularly its carbon fiber hull, which he believed would degrade with each dive. Instead of listening, the company fired and later sued him. Even Rush's close friend Carl Stanley reported hearing unsettling noises during a test dive, which clearly suggested structural issues. His warnings, too, went unheeded. In the end, these ignored warnings culminated in tragedy. Red flag number 3, the pressure to proceed. Let's talk about Tony Nissen, the guy who was literally in charge of making sure Titan didn't implode. He told the Coast Guard straight up, "I felt 100% pressured to get it working." He even refused to go on a test dive once because he didn't trust the sub. "I'm not getting into it," he mentioned. Now, that's the engineering equivalent of a pilot saying, "You know what, I'll take the bus." So what did OceanGate do? Applaud his courage? Nope. They showed him the door in 2019. CEO Stockton Rush seemed more interested in staying ahead of the game than staying alive. When the guy skipping certifications thinks safety is waste, we're not innovating anymore, we're gambling with human lives. People inside and outside the company were shouting from the hull, "This thing isn't ready." But it's disturbing how the company pressured employees to push forward until physics pushed back harder. Red flag number 4, when innovation starts looking a lot like recklessness. At OceanGate, the mantra seemed to be innovate first, ask questions later. CEO Stockton Rush was known for his unconventional approach. He often dismissed traditional safety protocols in favor of rapid innovation. Now, there's nothing wrong with pushing limits until you push them so hard that something snaps. In this case, a 22-foot carbon fiber tube at crushing ocean depths. Rush famously believed that safety was not worth questioning. He wasn't open to discussion. According to him, regulations made the industry obscenely safe, which for most of us sounds like a great thing, but for Rush, it was boring, it was bureaucratic, it was in the way. In one interview, he said, "You know, there hasn't been an injury in the commercial sub industry in over 35 years. That's like saying, no one's gotten food poisoning in this kitchen in decades, so it's time to ditch the thermometer." Meanwhile, real experts in the deep-sea game were side-eyeing OceanGate from a mile away. Patrick Leahy of Triton Submarines said it best, "Rush was the last person I'd entrust my life to in a submersible." And here's where it really gets wild. OceanGate wrote a whole blog post defending why they skipped industry certifications. Their argument was that traditional standards were an impediment to innovation. In other words, they didn't want anyone telling them no. But innovation without accountability, that's not bold, that's blind. So while OceanGate wrapped itself in the language of progress, what it really created was a ticking time bomb built on ego and denial. OceanGate underestimated the depths of the ocean. They underestimated the consequences. They believed their ambition was enough to rewrite physics, that if they spoke confidently enough, maybe bolts would hold tighter and carbon fiber would act like steel. In the end, human ego and a culture that mistook recklessness for innovation were major reasons behind the tragedy that took 5 lives. OceanGate wanted to make history, and they did, just not the kind anyone wanted to be remembered for. They dismissed experts and bet on hope instead of engineering, and the price? It was paid in lives. We all love the idea of exploration, the brave few who push the boundaries for the rest of us. But there's a fine line between pushing limits and erasing them completely. OceanGate didn't just cross that line, they dove past it, fast and loud, until the ocean finally answered back. So the next time someone says, "Let's break the rules," maybe ask, are these rules keeping us small or keeping us alive? Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy stories beneath the headlines, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.